you're racist. I'm simply saying this mindset.
By all means, suggest it. I can only say again, I'm an empiricist. I look at the facts and try to make proper deductions from the facts about the world. I'm not interested in whether something is racist or not. My eyes glaze over when you say that. What I want to know is it true? Is it true or is it false? If you can find something I've said in my book that's false, I'll be glad to argue with you about it, as indeed we are doing. But if you find something in my book and you say, oh, that's racist, sorry, you just lost me. I'm not interested.
Well, I would argue,
is it true or is it false?
I would argue, for one thing, I don't know what's false is, in terms of what you're saying, having women vote, I would think, was good for moving us toward progress in this country, toward civil rights, eventually, hopefully, gay rights and the rights for gay to marry. Having women empowered has produced legislation that's been good for welfare and child support, forcing delinquent fathers to pay their fair share. So your argument that women empowered in voting has been bad for this country because they tend to be, you say socialist, I would say perhaps liberal. You say that's been bad for the country. I think there's empirical evidence that that's been good for the country.
Well, then we'll have to disagree about that, Alan. I've rested my case in that chapter, and
I'm reopening it.
People can read it. People can read it for themselves.
All right. You also
female suffrage was bad for conservatism, and B, that we need conservatism, and we're kind of losing it.
Speaking of which, you say there is no prospect of any real revival of conservatism in the foreseeable future. You, John Derbyshire, fully expect to pass the rest of my life as an American without ever seeing any major conservative legislation passed by Congress.
Yes.
Like what? What would be an example of conservative legislation you would like to see passed by Congress?
Oh, goodness. Some rational immigration laws, tightly restricting numbers, and giving preference to people who can actually add something to the country.
Who determines that?
I'm sorry?
Who determines who can add something to the country? You
look at their qualification. Plenty of countries do this. Canada does it. They do it on a point system. If you've got a master's degree, you get so many points. You've got a doctor's degree, you get so many more points. If you've got a skilled trade, you get points. If you speak English, you get points. Plenty of countries do this. I think Australia does it too. I would like to see that done.
Any other legislation that?
Well, I would like to see the United Nations buildings tipped into the East River.
Oh, and please. That's horrible.
And the ground ploughed under and sowed with salt.
This is typical conservative rhetoric, ignoring all the good things the UN does.
Well, I have at least one ally in this. If you watched Muammar Gaddafi's speech at the UN the other day, he suggested that the UN be moved to Libya. And at that point, I stood up and cheered. Yeah.
So you and Muammar.
Me and Muammar Gaddafi.
That's
yes.
great. That's fantastic. Yes. But it would make a nice condo. It's got river view, so that's very nice there.
No, I'll go with the sowing the ground with salt.
So you don't feel the country has gotten away from you. And my final point is this: if you look at what's happened in this country, you've got loud, yelling people at town halls. This is a much better behaved group, obviously. You've got as you point out, and you're duly critical of the Bush administration for starting a war, yet you voted for him twice. You've got a division within the Republican Party. There seems to be no leadership in the party at this point. There's the Palin wing, and then there's maybe the sane wing of the Republican Party. What happened? How did it? I mean, are you a one-man band at this point? You know, spitting into the wind against a tide that is even in your own party going against where you are.
Possibly, but you know, you have to say what you think is true, and hope that it will plant seeds. What else can one do? What else can an honest person do? You do the same thing. I don't care if I'm a one-man band. I've said what I think is true. I've backed it up with lots of good facts, and put it in a book. I'm sorry if the Republican Party doesn't like it, but I'm not a Republican Party operative, and I don't feel the Republican Party has been much of a success in the last few years.
Well, you know the first commandment of the Republican Party, thou shalt not insult Rush Limbaugh. I think that is the number one.
Yeah, I found that out the other week.
and anybody any legislator who ever does insult Rush Limbaugh, within 24 hours backs off when Rush gets on his show the next day and insults that person. So congratulations for at least standing up for that.
I should say, actually, that there's a case for Rush Limbaugh. There's a case. It's not my case, but he does keep a lot of people interested in issues, and he does bring issues to people's attention, albeit not in a way that I think is always productive. But he does bring issues to people who otherwise might not know about them. You know, that's populism. Populism isn't always attractive, but it has a function.
Well, I just want to say I hope you sell a lot of books, because I think this book is great for liberalism. So I think this does my side very good. I think everybody should read this book. Liberals should read this book. Here's the other thing, just one other thing, is that you say...
From your mouth to God's ear, Alan.
Well, I'm here to help. I'm only here to help. You say at the beginning, this book, and you said it earlier tonight at the beginning of your speech, this book is addressed to American conservatives. Can I get a book? I mean, yeah, don't you want to have as broad an audience buy this book as possible?
Sure. But that's not who it's addressed to. You know, if I address something to you and it goes astray in the Postal Service, as it does, the Postal Service being a federal monopoly, that's okay.
That's socialism, the Postal Service.
It actually is, yes.
Yes, right.
Yes. I'm sorry?
That and those awful libraries.
And that fire department, my God, you call them up and they put a fire out in your house. That's socialism.
Well, that depends whether it's the volunteer fire department or the professional one.
So is there anything I did not cover that you want to cover, John?
Oh, let me see. Hold on. We hit sex, didn't we? That's not the right way to say it. Yeah, what about religion? You want to?
Oh, yeah, well, I'm curious about that. What I find intriguing about you go into this in your book is that you clearly state that you've kind of fallen away from religion yourself.
Yeah.
And yet we often associate conservatism, perhaps more so the Republican Party, with people who are religious. That also makes you an oddball, I guess, among your political, ideological soulmates. So I'm curious to know why you fell away from religion, and should there be a confluence between conservatism and religion in the first place?
I think, and I said in my book, that religion is net is probably a good thing for conservatism. Religious churches, for example, are very good at the kind of self-organizing, the self-organizing of small groups of people, for which the only alternative is being organized from above. So conservatism, I think, probably needs religion. And the thrust of my religion chapter is that we're going to lose our religion, and that's bad for conservatism, and so we are doomed.
Why did you lose yours?
Well, looking back, I think it was always somewhat against the grain. As I keep saying I'm an empiricist. I believe in evidence and data, but I disliked the kind of liberalism coming up in the 60s and 70s. I disliked it so much, in England, not only here, that it seemed to me that conservatism had something to say that liberalisms could not say. Religion had something to say that liberals could not say. And also, my church was the Anglican Church. It was the Church of England, which is... being a member of the Church of England is about as close to being an unbeliever as you can be while attending church. I told somebody once at a meeting that I'd lapsed from the Church of England. He said, that's like falling out of a first-floor window. So it wasn't, you know, I wasn't a person of very deep faith, but I loved the hymns. I still love them. I still sing hymns in my car. If you come to dinner at our house, you'll find that we still say grace at meals, actually. So, as I said at the beginning, I'm an unwilling unbeliever. I think I think religion is good for conservatism, and since conservatism is good for America, religion is good for America. And I feel a bit sad that I can't share that anymore as a believer, because I'm just not a believer. I just don't believe it.
One of the things you say in this religion chapter, though, is that one of the reasons, the case for religion has more to do, it seems, with keeping the social order, and the idea that it kind of keeps people in line, and this false idea that if you are religious, therefore you must be good, and it makes us feel as if we are somehow better behaved if we have religion. Isn't that more authoritarianism than it is conservatism?
Well, that depends on the religion. There are authoritarian religions.
I'm talking about the concept of religion keeping us in line, being good for the social order.
What's good, I say again, I'm sorry to repeat myself, what's good for the social order is that people organise themselves rather than waiting for somebody else to organise them. Alexis de Tocqueville, when he visited America in the 1830s, said that one thing that struck him, he says in Democracy in America, is that whereas in Europe people will wait around for the local landowner, the local baron or the crown to do something, in America people do it themselves. They get together and do it themselves. You know, they're barn-raising spirit. And churches are good for that kind of self-organization. It doesn't come from the top. It's not necessarily authoritarian. And in fact, I think I could, I'm doing this on the fly, but I think I could make an argument that the more authoritarian religions, like Roman Catholicism or Islam, the more authoritarian religions are the ones that are less good at that kind of bottom-up self-organizing, which I think is a great social plus.
Yeah, very interesting piece of information in the book, talking about, sticking with the facts. Irreligious religions of the United States, like the Pacific Northwest, have much better statistics on crime and other social dysfunction than religious regions like the Bible Belt.
Yes.
Which I find fascinating.
It's a fact, yeah.
Because we think converse to that. That's counterintuitive.
I don't know that it is. I think if you walked up to somebody in the street and said, where do you think people are better behaved, in Oregon or in Mississippi? I think they'd probably say in Oregon. And I think people kind of know that Oregon is much less religious than Mississippi. Oregon is the least religious state in the Union, and Mississippi is the most religious. So I don't think people would be surprised by that. So I think, and I have something to say about that, I think the hopes of some conservatives that religion necessarily makes people better are not well founded.
To conservatives, to the GOP, it's more of a voting bloc than anything else. It really represents a way to raise money, stand up against gay rights, stand up against abortion. Those two issues in particular are big money raisers for conservatives in the Republican Party, and that's really how they use religion, isn't it? That's really what religion means to them.
Yes, but that's what political parties do. What would you have them do? You know, if there's a large body of people out there who think that abortion is very evil, of course some political party is going to try to get their votes. Of course they are. And it doesn't look like the Democratic Party would do it. So sure, let.
But what I'm saying is I think many Republicans and conservatives may embrace religion more as a means to power and getting elected because that's going to get them the votes and raise them the money than them actually being God-fearing. Look how many conservatives we find doing things in men's room with their feet, or, winding up on the D.C. Madams list and then getting a standing ovation when they show up at a Republican lunch, David Vitter?
But at least they pay their taxes.
And that's the patriotic thing to do, isn't it?
Certainly is.
Yeah. All right.
But yes, Alan has a good point, and again, it's a point I make in the book, that there is an element of calculation in the way that political parties use religion, and not just not just the Republicans by any means. Goodness knows how many pictures have you seen of Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton and any number of other left-wing politicians giving emotional speeches in churches, usually black churches. I mean, they use religion too. Of course they do. That's the kind of thing politicians do. That's politics. It ain't beanbag.
I love this line, I think, in the book. I dislike modern American liberalism very much and believe it to be poisonous and destructive. Thank you very much. As well as arrogant and false. Them's fighting words, huh, John? I mean, that's pretty...
Well, but at least it's elegantly expressed. It's not,
your own admission.
It's not Glenn Beck.
But you say you're more at ease in a room full of New York liberals in a way that, to be truthful about, is I'm not in a gathering of red state evangelicals.
Yeah. That's a part of the book where I'm talking about what I call metro cons, that is metropolitan conservatives. And, the solid conservative base in America is the red state conservatives. It's the guys with pickup trucks with a gun rack in the back window, and...
people clinging to their guns and religion.
People clinging to their guns and religion, yes. Good luck to them. That's the solid foundation of American conservatism, and long may it endure. But there is another side to conservatism, what I call the metrocons, metropolitan conservatives. And I'm sorry to say I have to classify myself with them. And these are people who often don't have guns. I do, as it happens, have a gun
Are
collection.
you packing right now?